We sent home all of our non-essential staff, and we sent home all of our elder staff.
Tonight, how Alberta First Nations started planning early and remain COVID-free.
So without having galleries or stores or gift shops open, they're not selling my goods.
And Indigenous artists say now is the time to get creative. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. We begin tonight in Nova Scotia, where the deadliest mass shooting in Canadian history has left at least 19 people dead. Angel Moore reports.
A teacher, healthcare workers, and an RCMP officer are among the dead in a shooting rampage that spanned from Saturday night to Sunday morning in small towns north of Halifax. Police have identified 51-year-old Gabriel Wortman as the alleged gunman. Wortman is now dead, though it's not clear it was from RCMP gunfire. Among the victims is veteran RCMP officer Heidi Stevenson, a respected officer within the Sebonagady and Millbrook Mi'kmaq communities. Today at a press conference in Halifax, the RCMP said they're investigating 16 crime scenes, which will take months. Here's what RCMP Chief Superintendent Chris Leather had to say.
Now, there are in excess of 19 victims, both men and women, and all were adults. It appears that some of the victims were known to the suspect, and others were targeted and not known to the suspect.
The shooting started Saturday night in Portapique, a small community about an hour and a half north of Halifax. Police were called to home at around 11:30 p.m., where they found victims inside and outside of the home. Eyewitnesses reported multiple house fires within the area, and early Sunday morning, the RCMP warned people there was an active shooter in the area and that they should stay in their basements, and that the suspect was driving a vehicle that looked like an RCMP vehicle and wearing an officer's uniform. They told the public to stay off Highway 102, the highway that runs through Millbrook First Nation down to Halifax. 2 cars were burning on the highway near Sebonagady, and gunshots were reported. The police later caught up with the suspect at a gas station in Enfield, and just 27 kilometers outside of Halifax, the shooting spree ended. It is not clear that the gunman died from RCMP gunfire. Earlier today, Public Safety Minister Bill Blair was asked by multiple reporters about gun control legislation. He said the government is working on it, but today was about remembering the victims and the loss to the community.
A nurse, a teacher, correction officers, a serving police officer, parents, neighbors, and friends. The full scope of this tragedy and the 18 innocent lives that were lost will be remembered throughout Canada's history.
As we heard, Bill Blair did say 18 deaths, but RCMP has confirmed that there is at least 19 deaths. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Chipuktuk, Halifax.
Thanks for that, Angel. To Winnipeg now, there was another fatal police shooting in the city over the weekend. The third in under 2 weeks. A 22-year-old First Nations man is dead after a confrontation with police early Saturday morning. Family have identified the victim as Stuart Andrews, who was originally from God's Lake First Nation in northern Manitoba. Police say they received a call around 4 a.m. that 2 men had attempted to rob a man at gunpoint. They received a second call shortly after saying that the men were breaking windows at a nearby apartment. Police say that officers began to search the area when they found the suspects. Police say during this encounter, an officer shot Andrews. The second male, a 16-year-old, is charged with robbery and weapon possession. Police say that despite these incidences, the pandemic has not changed the number of calls for service that they're receiving.
We're not really seeing any differences in the amount of crime that we're experiencing compared to other years. I think what's remarkable is that it's just a decidedly different feel out in the community right now because there isn't as much traffic and as many people moving about. So the community has a very different feel for our officers and frankly anyone that's out and about, whether you're grocery shopping or going out for a walk.
This is the third time in 10 days that Winnipeg police have shot and killed an Indigenous person. 16-year-old Aisha Hudson was killed after an alleged liquor store robbery and police chase. And 36-year-old Jason Collins died after police say they responded to a domestic incident. The House of Commons began sitting again today to debate how many times it would meet per week in the future. But as Todd Lamourand reports, the talk at today's COVID-19 briefing was about whether the pandemic has peaked.
Dr. Theresa Tam was asked about the slowdown of some outbreaks in other provinces, but she continued to preach caution.
Now is absolutely not the time to sort of change our current stance. We need to keep going on our public health measures, but I think it's a testament to the work of all Canadians that we have managed to move to this more positive direction.
She said there are still some areas of concern, and not just in long-term care facilities.
We heard of a work camp in Alberta and other settings where I think we need to take a significant amount of care so that we don't ignite new chains of transmission.
Dr. Tam was also asked about how restless Canadians may be getting, especially considering the protests over social distancing in the U.S.
Now is not the time to let go of all the hard-earned efforts that you have just put in to slow down this epidemic. We've got to keep going.
During question period, the Conservatives were asked about a plan to restart the economy, with new COVID cases starting to stabilize.
Canadians need to see a plan. When will the Liberals provide a national plan to get this country back to work?
Health Minister Patty Haydu responded that she is still coordinating with the provinces and territories.
She identifies whether it's research, whether it's support for public health, whether it's boosting up our healthcare system across the country. These are steps that we need to take together in a coordinated fashion. We'll continue that hard work, Mr. Speaker, and we'll come back to Canadians when we have a plan that will protect their safety first and foremost and allow people to get back to work.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Trudeau was asked about relaxing social distancing rules so families in Nova Scotia could bury their loved ones properly.
And I know that everyone will be looking for ways to demonstrate their solidarity without putting further at risk communities, first responders, our health professionals, and our seniors.
The House continued to debate how often it may sit in person as we went to air. Todd Lamourand, APTN National News, Ottawa.
During a press briefing, Public Safety Minister Bill Blair also revealed that, quote, hundreds of low-risk inmates were quietly approved for release from federal prisons due to concerns over COVID-19. Blair told reporters that he is in almost daily contact with Correctional Services and the Parole Board of Canada, and that they're making significant steps to ensure that health and safety for inmates is maintained. They also said that they've received over 600 applications for early release to date, and that work is being done to better protect those inmates who are not eligible for parole.
We are trying to strike a balance between the importance of keeping that inmate population which cannot be released safe and healthy within the institutions, and ensuring those people who would benefit from an earlier release are given full consideration in that determination.
COVID-19 has hit the far north of Saskatchewan. The community of La Loche now has 6 active cases. La Loche confirmed its first positive case of COVID-19 on April 15th. The 6 people who have tested positive are all in self-isolation in their homes to stop the spread of the virus. Mayor Robert St. Pierre says that the community is managing to deal with the positive cases and is encouraging people to continue to practice social distancing.
Well, it's been a hectic time in the community of La Loche. We've had to deal with the positive cases that had returned. And so far it's 6, and that has remained at 6 thus far. We're not on lockdown. We have a curfew from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Then we have a checkpoint.
The 45 First Nations in Alberta have so far reported 0 cases of COVID-19, and with the province reporting over 2,800 active cases, that's a pretty impressive feat. Chris Stewart has a look at why.
Chief Vernon Saddleback says his community of Samson Cree Nation and the surrounding nations of Musquecheese have 0 cases of COVID-19. because leadership started taking early precautions.
We got organized and got busy right away. We sent home all of our non-essential staff, and we sent home all of our elder staff and any staff who had any pre-existing physical illnesses or disabilities.
Murray Potts is the Emergency Management Director for Sampson Cree Nation. The nation created a color warning sign for residents to put in their windows, from green to red, to easily identify people who need help or provisions.
If there's a caution or red, yellow or red, then we honk our horn, and so they know we're there. We put the food by the door, we step back, and then they can take it without any interaction being involved.
A lockdown and curfew were also implemented by Sampson on April 17th to keep the number of infections at 0.
We don't want to be the first ones, and I'm sure that any other nation doesn't want to be the first ones, so we're taking every measure that we can take to stop this.
Leadership says the community has supported their hard choices.
Doing a real team effort within the nation.
Somebody can learn off with us, well, great, then they can pass it on to their own community, and it continues to grow.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
We need to take a quick break, but we still have lots of news ahead, including a changing business landscape for many Indigenous businesses and a BC prison struggling to deal with a COVID outbreak. First, here's a look at weather in the east and central parts of the country. To the east coast, we've got 10 and sunshine for Fredericton, 2 and cloud for St. John's. La Grande River -5 and snow in Nixuak -13 and sunny skies. Saguenay 4 degrees and sunshine 6 and cloud from Montreal. Toronto's 3 with some snow, 4 and snow in Ottawa. Kapuas, Casing and Timmins -3 and snow 0 and sunny skies for Thunder Bay. 0 and snow for the Pas, -3 for Puckaswagan and Thompson. 2 and snow for Winnipeg, 1 for Barons River and Princess Harbour and cloudy skies there. 20 and lots of sunshine for Swift Current and Regina, 15 and sunny in Saskatoon. 12 and sunshine for Meadow Lake, mix of sun and cloud, and 1 degree for Stony Rapids, 1 also in Uranium City, but with some snow. Welcome back. Security measures are being increased in 6 nations of the Grand River after multiple large gatherings are said to have taken place over the weekend. A press release from Chief and Council indicate one gathering in particular led to an outpouring of calls. Community members reported the presence of at least 25 cars at a single residence Saturday night and early Sunday morning. Councillor Nathan Wright said while discussions with police are ongoing, checkpoints are going to be strengthened.
I think what I can say at this point is discussions have initiated in terms of looking at what measures we can put in place. I don't think we want to move hastily, but have something in place for later this week that tightens the reins at each of the checkpoints, but more importantly gives the support necessary and all the tools to the individuals that are manning some of those checkpoints. And that's the work that we're looking at to increase the security measures and further limit access to the territory going forward.
To date, all 5 COVID-19 patients that have been identified in the Northwest Territories have recovered, but that's not stopping the government from taking aggressive measures to ensure residents are following physical distancing and isolation orders. Charlotte Moritz-Jacobs takes a look at their unique approach.
One by one, public health officers give a spiel about new Northwest Territories specific COVID-19 rules, informing residents on orders like mandatory isolation after entering the territory, no indoor gatherings, or outdoor gatherings with limits of 10 people. The 28-member Compliance and Enforcement Task Force is led by Deputy Chief Public Health Officer Conrad Bates. He says they've already received several complaints.
Complaints are related to the mass gatherings, like you mentioned. We're getting complaints with respect to people and their self-isolation challenges and so on and so forth. So those are some of the things that we're trying to clear up by hand.
The check stop was intended to educate the public. There's been no fines or court cases because of violated public health orders yet. It's an adjustment for many, including media who might have forgotten to also practice physical distancing, even while interviewing enforcement staff.
I think with any new regulation or with any new law, with any new order in these particular cases, there's a degree of people not quite sure exactly what they mean. You try to write them as clear as you can, obviously, but there always is a need for that education component, and that's exactly why we're here today.
But the Canadian Civil Liberties Association is saying those written health orders aren't clear. In a letter addressed to Justice Minister Carolyn Wozniak, Abby Deshman, director of the Criminal Justice Program for CCLA, wrote she's concerned that some orders are unjustifiable, given a lack of definition around outdoor gatherings, public gatherings, and private gatherings.
It's very hard to tell, for example, what is a public gathering? Does that mean that it's two people together on a sidewalk, which is a public space? Because if that's what's prohibited, that's extremely broad. Is a private gathering two people who are just privately walking and didn't announce that they were going to walk, or are we talking about gatherings on private land, and that's what makes a difference? You know, all of these questions are left up to interpretation.
If public health officers believe an order has been violated, they will explain the rules to a person, but then also can issue a ticket up to $1,500. APTN asked Bates whether there was a risk of neighbors tattling on neighbors.
It's entirely possible. What's important is to make sure that if you have a legitimate complaint to make, don't hesitate to call or to email Protect NWT.
Today, all 5 COVID-19 cases in the Northwest Territories have recovered. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
The federal government is spending $300 million to help Indigenous tourism operations because those businesses are extremely vulnerable to this pandemic, and operators say that they are risking closing their doors permanently. Lee Wilson has more.
The Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada was formed 5 years ago to help grow Indigenous tourism in the country. In that period, their CEO, Keith Henry, saw industry transform and grow. But now, with the global pandemic, which has shut down all travel, he says 90% of businesses could be closing for good.
We have to do something very quick if we want to save we were becoming a world leader for Indigenous tourism, and we could see it all gone in a matter of a few months.
Indigenous tourism is a multi-billion-dollar industry, with 40,000 people working and 1,900 businesses across the country, including resorts, adventure tours, and art galleries.
Right. Indigenous tourism was seeing tremendous growth, basically leading up till the pandemic. Up until December 2019, we were doing annual surveying, and we just had what we felt was another record-breaking year for direct sales and sort of building of new businesses in Indigenous tourism. We were worth almost an estimated $2 billion in direct GDP.
Seawolf Adventures was preparing for their biggest year, but COVID-19 halted it all. Mike Willie is from the Kwakwala-speaking people, tribes that run along Vancouver Island's coast and parts of mainland BC, operating wildlife and cultural tours.
We did have another boat coming because the demand was there for us to get a new boat. And so we had to put that on hold. It's half done. And so unfortunately that happened, the COVID happened. Right now we're seeing a lot of cancellations just like everyone else.
Willie says his business is down $200,000 in deposits and bookings. Right now, his company has not received any financial support. They are at the risk of bankruptcy.
We're delinquent on our boat payments and our line of credits. Like you can see what could happen, right? And to be honest, that's one route that we're looking at right now, because we need to know what it looks like to go bankrupt, right? And because the money isn't coming in, and the bank still wants their money.
Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada is calling for two things: a $16 million development grant that will help 640 businesses, and a $570 million in a loan structure to help Indigenous businesses refinance and weather the storm that is COVID-19.
But the large majority, especially those startups, they relied heavily on the Aboriginal financial institutions. They might have had a bank account at a major bank, but who provided them like the initial investment for marketing and operational costs and things like that was helping them get incubated through the 60 or so Aboriginal financial institutions in the country.
Canada has built its Indigenous tourism to be among world leaders, but years of hard work could be undone, and there won't be any industry left to save.
What we don't want is the clock to be turned back again, and for us to be standing on the outside looking in to the tourism circle. For many, many years, it was that way, right? And
Lee Wilson, APTN National News, British Columbia.
We've got lots more news still ahead, but we have to take another break. Stay with us. To northern Alberta, we got 4 in snow for Fort Chip, 13 in sunshine for Peace River and Grand Prairie, 17 in sunshine for Edmonton, 21 for Medicine Hat and Lethbridge and sunny skies. Kamloops, sunshine, and 23, Vancouver, 15 and cloud. 10 and rain for Prince Rupert, 7 and cloudy skies for Dease Lake. Dawson City is 6 and snow. Whitehorse, mix of sun and cloud and 10 degrees. -1 and snow for Norman Wells. Wauhee will be 0 and some snow. Mix of sun and cloud, and -7 for Fort McPherson. Colville Lake, -6 and snow. Whale Cove and Chesterfield, sunny skies, -18. Arvey at -13 and mostly sunny. Arctic Bay, -13 and sunshine. Clyde River, mix of sun and cloud, and -14 and -15 and snow for Igloolik. Welcome back. Many artists rely on events and local stores to sell their work, but with the COVID-19 pandemic, events are being cancelled and stores are closed. So how are Indigenous artists coping? Tamara Pimentel has that story.
Amy Willier and her mother Yvonne Jobin run Moonstone Creations in Calgary, a gift shop where you can find local Indigenous art and supplies. It's a full-time job for this family with steady business, but COVID-19 closed their doors and put a halt to the majority of art sales.
We have shifted gears and have made face masks with our beaded fabric that we sell, and it's been really, really well.
The mother-daughter duo have created and sold hundreds of fashionable masks since the pandemic began, offering only curbside pickup orders 3 times a week.
We were able to pay our rent, which is awesome. Thank God for that. We're able to still stay in operation.
Willier says things like fabric and smudge kits are the only other products selling.
People aren't buying earrings, or they're not buying a purse or something because it's something that they want to see in person. So I think for other artists who make beaded jewelry, it's a bit harder in that aspect.
The struggling artist is real.
People like Melrine Saloy, a Blackfoot artist based in Calgary who owns Native Diva Creations. She relies heavily on local stores and events to sell her work.
So without having galleries or stores or gift shops open, they're not selling my goods. I'm unable to be there in an event or something like a powwow or graduation, a trade show. They're all canceled.
Native Diva Creation sells at 27 different stores on Turtle Island. It's Saloy's main income.
The first month was terrifying. Really, it was. I didn't know what I was going to do. Every single event started canceling, and it was just getting worse and worse and worse.
Saloy says she's collaborating with other artists, being more present on social media, and taking the extra time to create more products. At Moonstone Creations, Willier says it's a time to get creative.
Creator has made us sit and be still, because we're always out in the world, and we're always on the phone, and we're always doing something where it's not sitting and being still and being present in this moment with the people around you, with your beadwork. And we have to remember, it's all a part of the plan somehow.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Calgary.
Some good advice to make the most of this time where you are forced to be sit and still. Well, that's your APTN News for tonight. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Thanks for tuning in.